Greetings and Happy New Year, students. We are really delighted to have you join us for our hybrid learning, where we are using, a combination of a lot of platforms. And today happens to be one of those platforms at TV47, where we will be using the TV platform to enable your learning during these challenging times. And in the spring of 2021, I'll be taking you through advertising media strategy, that is BJL4110. If we have not met before, my name is Benjamin Muindi, and it's my delight to take you through this course during the semester. Welcome to today's session, where we'll be discussing the strategic relationship of advertising to the overall business strategy. This is one of the topics in the course, advertising media strategy, but I'll speak to a lot of factors that involve advertising and advertising strategy when you are doing business. For purposes of referencing, I am guided by the work of Phil, Hughes, and Francisco 2012. It's a very authoritative and instructive book on advertising strategies, planning, and position, and especially chapter 4 that I've highlighted for you. A lot of the concepts and the issues that we'll be discussing in today's session are drawn mainly from this reference material, even though there's a lot of supplementary materials that I'll be citing throughout my presentation. So I would like to speak to the idea of strategy in the first place, in a very macro perspective, in a global perspective when you are doing business. That advertising strategy or advertising media strategy is one of those components that are really critical for the success of your business. I'm imagining that anyone who sets out to do business, or who sets out to start a farm or whatever enterprise it is in any industry, they seek or they hope that their business will be a success, that they will be able to push their products to their customers successfully, or the services or whatever it is that you are involved in selling to the community. And therefore, you need a strategy that will enable you to do that work using the most efficient means and reaching the customers in the most effective manner. So let's first try to define what a strategy is, and then we see at what point then do we look at advertising media strategy. So literature that I have consulted while preparing this presentation defines strategy as a kind of deliberate, planned approach to business development. So there is the idea that it's something that the people who are doing business deliberately sit down and put pen to paper and think through certain things, including means, speed, and methods in which the organization can achieve its ends, and also on how they can operate within an environment that is not only challenging but also that is changing from time to time, depending on the factors that are accosting the particular business or the particular industry that we are concerned with. And strategy really is also concerned with the bigger picture, and not necessarily with the tactical operations of the day-to-day running of the particular business. So when you're thinking about strategy, you need to think about long-term approaches, but you also need to think about contextual issues that play or that come into play when you are running a business. And strategy itself can take different forms and different styles, dependent on what is the industry that you are in and what is the context, or what is the environment that you are doing that particular business, because different contexts or different environments present or they cost businesses with different kind of challenges, and therefore business entrepreneurs need to be cognizant of these environmental challenges and how then they can mitigate and overcome the challenges of the environment or the times that the business is founded to achieve goals or to achieve the organization mission and vision. So with strategy, there are certain layers, or there are certain tiers that we can discuss in our session today, and mainly we focus on at least 3 levels when you are discussing organizational strategy. And the first one is what you call corporate strategy. And corporate strategy deals with the broad organizational goals. So you think about an organization like a university. The broad organizational goals would be to educate communities, to better the lives of the immediate environment or the immediate context in which that particular organization is situated or it's planted. So if you think about a university like MKU and having a main campus, for instance, in Thika, the corporate strategy is not just about teaching or supplying skills to students or to the community, largely the Kenyan community, because this is a national university. But you're looking at a broad kind of goal where the corporate strategy is aiming at changing society by impacting people's lives, giving them skills, giving them knowledge, inculcating certain values or certain attitudes that will better society. So that is what you call corporate strategy. It's a more kind of an abstract kind of overarching goal that corporate organizations do have. And then there is the functional strategy. And the functional strategy then is the kind of strategy that enables an organization run its day-to-day affairs. And under this, we are involved, or we talk to departments such as the marketing department, finance department, among different other production departments that deal with particular industry or particular enterprise that we have for our context. Then competitive level strategies, these are the kind of strategies that you develop that enable the organization to compete in whatever context that it finds itself in, but also it enables that organization to utilize resources and to manage its environment in an effective and efficient way. So again, just to give the example of MKU as a university, it is not the only university that we are having within the Kenyan context. There are so many other universities. I think going by the Commission of University Education, we have at least 70 or 80 public and private universities in Kenya. So for MKU then to come up with, or to be a leader within that industry, it needs to develop some competitive level strategies that give it a better pace, that make it an outstanding organization, and we shall have a look at some of those strategies within that context. When you think about strategy again, you also investigate what is the nature of strategy that we are discussing in our context of business strategy, and specifically advertising as a part of that overarching goal or strategy. So strategy is hierarchical and it's also integrated. So what do I mean when I say that it is hierarchical and integrated? What I mean is that there are certain layers, or there are certain tiers or levels that are applied at different stages, at different phases, so that the organization can achieve its overall objective. And that is why the topic of our discussion really is on the strategic positioning of advertising strategy in relation to the corporate business strategy. You know, the overarching strategy and how it relates to advertising. Sorry, how advertising strategy relates to the bigger picture, which is the corporate or business strategy. So like I explained previously, corporate or business strategy is, you know, that macro goal, that big goal that tells us how is the organization going, what is the direction that this particular organization is taking, or how do we foresee this organization in 10 years, 50 years, 100 years to come. Then under the corporate strategy, then there is the marketing strategy, communication strategy, and at the bottom of it is advertising strategy. And these three strategies feed into the corporate strategy in a very integrated manner. And that's why I was saying this phenomenon is not just hierarchical, but it is also very integrated, meaning that one layer feeds onto the other one, and the other one feeds onto the other one, until you get to the cup of it, which is the corporate business strategy. To add on to that, I think I've already explained that slide. Probably I can use this illustration to just explain clearly what I'm talking about. That on top of this is the business strategy and corporate philosophy, and this is what I was saying. It's kind of an abstract kind of thinking when you're having an enterprise, and I've already given an example of a university. You know, the idea is not just to educate people or give them certain degrees or you know, for them to get certificates and stuff like that. But the philosophy is higher, you know, in terms of ranking and the value, intrinsic value that is being accrued in the community. You don't just want people to have certificates, you don't just want people to have degrees, but you want a community, you have a vision for a community. And you know, the vision is, you know, the overarching drive that gives sense to the business that you are involved in. And then down here then is the marketing strategy that is not only feeding to the business strategy, but there is a kind of a circuit that is happening here that, you know, these two are feeding into each other. As the business strategy changes, the marketing strategy changes, depending on what we saw earlier, that there is the context, there is, you know, issues about gaining a competitive edge among many others. Then you come up with what you call MACOM strategies, marketing communication strategies, under which marketing communication strategies is where then we find the issue of advertising strategy being one of those aspects of marketing communication strategy, you know, in brief, that is called MACOM strategy, that helps organization achieve their marketing strategy. And in turn, by achieving the marketing strategy of that business, then the business becomes a success because it has achieved its corporate philosophy, or it has met its main objective. So under MACOM strategy, what we really discuss here are two dynamics. And the dynamics here are, number one is what you call the target audience. You look at who are your customers, who are your customer base, what are their needs, what is missing, what is the gap in the market. You try to identify in what ways can customers gain intrinsic value from the products, the services, or whatever business that you are engaged in. So that becomes your focus. And once you zero in on who is your target audience, then the next thing to concentrate on is the perception of value. And this is the way in which consumers understand the offering that they are experiencing through communication. Think about the different brand of cars that we have in the market. We have, you know, the so-called German vehicles, BMWs, Mercedes-Benz, Audi, and so on and so forth. And we do have Asian produced cars, Toyotas, Suzukis, and all that. When you start to think about marketing communication strategy and you're looking at the cars market, the target audience for these vehicles is very different. And when you are doing a marketing communication strategy, you want to use advertising in ways that, you know, consumers or buyers or users of different vehicles will find intrinsic value. So you think about someone who is driving a BMW, for instance, and someone who is driving a Toyota, or, you know, whatever other vehicle that is produced, let's say in Japan, for instance, and then you start to discuss the idea of the offering that is coming from that particular good. You realize that the target audience is very different, that you are targeting customers who have different needs. For instance, if someone is or wants to drive a BMW, it means that they've already gotten to a certain level in terms of their actualization as a person. They want a certain social class. They have achieved a certain level of financial stability, and so on and so forth. So they're looking for, or they have needs that are intrinsic, in the sense that they're not just looking for a vehicle, but they're also looking for a vehicle that gives them certain perception. You know, probably it could be a social perception that when someone is driving that vehicle on Kenyan roads or whatever roads it is, they gain value, or they gain gratification by people saying, that's a good German vehicle, that's a Mercedes-Benz, or that's an Audi, and so on and so forth. So this is significantly different from a target audience about customers who just want a convenient means of traveling from point A to point B. So that person is not really looking for certain perceptions about what will people think about me while I'm driving this vehicle, and so on and so forth. So that is basically the two dynamics that come into play. And that is why advertising becomes a very, very important component when you are doing business, and if you want to achieve success with your business. Because, you know, at the bottom of it, the crux of the matter is, have you zeroed in on your audiences? And if you have really zeroed in on those particular audiences, how are you positioning the products and the goods that you are offering, or the services that you are offering to the people? And what is the perceived value through communication? You know, how are you going about positioning that vehicle such that people can appreciate or can gain that intrinsic gratification that is coming from that particular service, or that is coming from that particular good? So advertising really is concerned with positioning, and with positioning there is the idea about visibility and recognition. Visibility of what the product, the service, or the organization represents to a buyer. And probably if I may go back to the idea about BMW, a BMW vehicle could represent a lot of things to someone who is buying it. It could represent safety, it could represent class, it could represent you know, certain intrinsic gratifications that come with buying that particular vehicle. And therefore advertising not only identifies, but it also aids understanding of a product's intrinsic value. So you will find that how the how the product or the service or the particular organization is being positioned within that particular market, then it is through that communication that buyers, or the so-called target audience, draw that kind of value as a result of that particular communication. So at this level we discuss about the so-called 3P strategies, and 3P strategies here is now a kind of a breakdown, you know, like breaking it further to understand really what are the nitty-gritty of the phenomena that we are talking about. And at the first level is what you call pull positioning strategies. And pull positioning strategies are the kind of strategies that are usually intended to influence consumers and B2B, business to business. So you're thinking about advertising that targets your target audience. You're looking at, once you've zeroed in on these particular audiences, you start to position the product in the market to reach out to those particular people, or even to do what you call business to business kind of advertising. So the end game here is the consumers. But with push positioning strategies in advertising, or broadly the MACOM strategy, marketing communication, in this category we are concerned with intermediaries. So if you think about BMWs that are produced in Bavaria, or they're produced in different parts where the BMW company has set up agencies across the world, then you are dealing with the traders and channel buyers or intermediaries, people who are coming in between the manufacturers and then the end consumers. All that chain of people who come in between there. That's what you call push positioning strategies. And then finally there is the profile positioning strategies, and these are intended to various stakeholders of an organization. So if you think about the broad publics that constitute an organization, it could be shareholders, directors, suppliers, different publics as we define them in the context of public relations. Then these are the people who are targeted, or these are the target audience for these kind of strategies. So just again to illustrate this kind of strategies here is there is the strategy in one column, whether the strategy is pull, push, or profile. And then you think about who are the target audiences in this context. If it's pull, I've already explained that the target audience are the consumers or end users in B2B customers, business to business customers. So ideally, all that cluster is talking about the consumers at the end of it. And the message focus here is about the product or the service. So you're looking at, this is a good car, it will give you good service, and you zero in on the features of that particular product, or the characteristics of the service that you're offering these consumers. And then the goal for this kind of strategy is for those people to purchase, for them to buy the product. Then with pull strategies, we deal with, I've already said, it's the intermediaries, the people who are coming in between the manufacturers and then the consumers at the end of it. And with the intermediaries, again, the message focus is also on product and the service. And the idea or the goal, the overarching objective with push strategies is to develop a relationship with the distribution network. So you want to have a good rapport, a healthy relationship with the entire chain of the business process and production. Then there is the profile strategies, and like I've already explained, these deal with different stakeholders. I've already said we have shareholders, directors, and so on and so forth. And the message is not on the product or the service, so the focus becomes on the organization. BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Audi, and so on and so forth. So you're not focusing on the particular models that the company is looking at, but rather on the organization or the enterprise. And at this level, you're trying to build reputation. And like they say, reputation is everything. So if you have a successful reputation, it means that your business will be guaranteed success. So those are the 3 P's that are usually about positioning of an organization. So at this point, I would like to switch from talking about strategy to discussing some hands-on ways of how we can implement the plan or the advertising media strategy. What kind of skills or what kind of knowledge do we need to have so that we can carry out a successful strategic plan, or carry out the exact plan to a success. And at this point, it's important to understand something that is called cradle to grave kind of production life cycle. And cradle to grave is just a metaphorical, creative way of looking at things or a product from the time it is being born, cradle, and to the time that it probably dissipates in the market, or people are no longer interested in the product, depending on the context again. And I have made kind of an illustration here that can capture really what we're talking about when you're thinking about product life cycle, the idea of cradle to grave, philosophy or coinage. So on the y-axis is the sales, and then on the x-axis is the time that it takes for the sales to, or for the process to take form or to take shape. So at the introductory stage, which is the time that a product is being introduced into the market, usually there is kind of a very slow uptake, that people don't really know that product, and it's being introduced into the market for the first time. And because of that lack of knowledge, lack of experience, and even lack of aggressive marketing strategies, for instance, the sales are not as robust or significant as they should. But with effective advertising strategies, the product starts to grow, and then there is that peak level that is called growth, which is stage 2, and then the product is now being appreciated in the market. Customers are confident about the product or the service, and the growth is steady. And then it gets to a level where the product has already percolated the marketplace. People are already aware of this product, they have confidence in it, and we can say that it's reached a kind of a peak where probably you can't push the limits any further. So we say now that the product has entered maturity stage. And you can think about many products in Kenyan market, or even in the global market, that we can say have entered the maturity stage. I can shift examples from the cars and probably now talk about something like phones, for instance. You think about new phones that are always being introduced, new brands of phones that are always being introduced in the market. And you think about a phone that used to be called, or it's still being called Nokia, for instance. There's a time that Nokia was a really popular brand in the market. It was like some kind of an in thing. So if you're having a Nokia, you are fashionable, if I can use that kind of a phrase. And then it entered, well, it got to that growth stage, and then the product just matured. And because of certain concepts I was talking about earlier, issues about being able to adapt to context or environment. For instance, Nokia could not really adapt so fast to a changing environment, changing consumer needs, changing technological needs and stuff like that. And after its maturity level, it started to decline. So a lot of people don't use Nokia nowadays. They use different brands of phones that were not even there while Nokia was already at its growth. So you can see that is a kind of a product life cycle that is being experienced. This cycle is not always cast in stone. It might not apply, it's not one size fit for all. Some products might still be in maturity stage for a very long time, and they hardly decline because of the sustainability advertising strategies that have been used to ensure that product is in the market. Some products are introduced into the market, and maybe because of the failure of advertising strategies or using ineffective strategies to advertise, the product does not grow and it doesn't reach maturity. But this is an ideal model that has been used to discuss the concept of product life cycle and to enable people who are thinking about positioning of a product in the market to look at different processes and how these processes tie into the process of growth, or to the process of maturity, or to the process of decline of that particular product. This slide basically is explaining the illustration that I've already shared with you, so I don't think there is a point of regurgitating all that. Probably what I can say then is there is usually a plan that we usually apply when we are discussing this kind of strategy, and the plan depends on whether the product is new. If you remember what I've already said in this slide of the illustration, I've said sometimes you're introducing a new product, and sometimes you already want to revive an existing product so that it does not decline. So depending on what product you want, let's say it's a new product, like let's say an Oppo phone. An Oppo phone, or the brand of phones that is called Oppo, it's a relatively new brand in the market. I don't think it's more than 5 years. I'm not sure, I'm not certain about that. But comparatively, if you think about other phones, let's say iPhone, Samsung, Nokia, and so on and so forth, it's a relatively new brand. So assuming that you want to bring this new product into the market, you are going to use the 9-step process that I will explain in a short while. But if you are having an existing product, like now let's say the Nokia phone that I was giving the example of, this is a product that has already been in the market for decades, and you want to revive it, you want to give it, you know, a new oomph, as they say, then you will not use the 9-step process. What you'll just do is use a shorter process that is called the 6-step process. And you know, once I explain these 2-step processes, these 2-tier processes, then we will wrap our today's session. So let me begin with the 9-step planning and strategy process. Just like the name suggests, the 9-step strategy has got 9 steps, and the steps are captured here in brief, but I want to speak to each of the steps in detail. So ideally, at the first time, the first step is what you call an integration stage. So you integrate internally, and what this means is you have a kind of an understanding within the organization to discuss what are the goals, what are the objectives, and then agree on those objectives as an organization, so that you're driving into the marketplace with one objective that is very clear and that is very consistent. Then after that, you develop a kind of a brand book, and a brand book is what helps to maintain common standards, whether these standards are of visual, values, images, tone, and feel. So if you think about a phone, or if you think about a car, irrespective of where that particular car is being used, as long as it is a BMW vehicle, there are common standards, conventional standards that are applied. So if someone is driving a BMW X5 in Nairobi, it is the same BMW with common standards that someone else in Japan or in London or in Washington will be driving. So you know, there is an established brand book for that particular product. If it's an iPhone 10X, you know, whether someone is using that iPhone in South Africa or whatever it is, there is a standard features, characteristics that come with that brand of phone. So that is captured in the brand book. Then you capture issues like logos, you capture issues like colors, tone, and feel, among others. So if you think about a university like MKU again, if you go to MKU Rwanda, for instance, you find that they are using the same images in terms of logos, they're using the same colors, they're using, you know, the feel about a product or an institution is standardized. And after that, then you develop the Marcom strategies. Now you set out what are the objectives, and then how are you going to clearly position your product in the marketplace. And here you develop some very clear statements that capture that goal. And then you look at the budget. So the budget is a very important component, even though it's not among number 1, number 2, number 3, it doesn't mean that the priority is less, because the communication plan a lot of the times is dictated by the budget, depending on the things that the finances can allow you to do at that particular time. And once you draw up that budget, then you identify your target audience at number 5. You look at the audience profiles. You look at what are their motivations, what do these people need in terms of the product or the service, and at what level of buying are they in. And this is what I was saying earlier for BMWs and let's say Toyotas, for instance. Someone who is buying a BMW is already at a different buying stage as opposed to someone who is buying, let's say, a vehicle for convenience. So that audience, target audience for BMWs, Porsche, luxury vehicles, their motivations are very different. These are people who are not just thinking about movement or the utility of a vehicle, but they're looking at intrinsic values of class, the so-called finer things or finer gratifications that a product can give you. Then once you do that, then you identify or you develop a marketing information system. And a marketing information system really is like a database of your target audiences. You've already profiled them. You've already looked at what are their possible income brackets, how are their spending habits, at what time of the year would they be spending more, at what time would they be broke, and stuff like that. Because this information helps you to push the product or the service to these people at in an insightful way, and that is why we call it a strategy. Then you develop an original plan, what you call creative strategy, so that you reach these people. And with creativity, it can oscillate from being subjective to something objective. And this is where people now start capturing certain phrases that go with certain products. Some phrases become very catchy, some phrases become slogans, some phrases have certain connotations to people's lives and stuff like that. So you develop a creative strategy dependent on the context, the product. It's a very contingency kind of strategy, because a lot of factors come into coming up with a creative strategy. Then you launch the campaign and share the messages out, and then after that you do the evaluation, and the evaluation is the last stage, even though it's not the least, where you track, you monitor, you measure, you learn, and you adjust accordingly. Having spoken to these stages, the 9 stages, it's when you are introducing a new product into the market. But if it's an existing product already that is in the market, then you don't need to do the 9-step strategy, like I've already alluded to. So the first step is different for the 6-step strategy. And here, what you do is you perform a situation analysis. Because the product is already in the market, people already know about Nokia. Some of them have experienced Nokia. Newer and newer generations have probably not experienced Nokia. So you do a situational analysis to understand how is the product currently being received, what is the product offering, what are the values, or what are the intrinsic benefits that people are getting, at what point do people lack satisfaction in it, and so on and so forth. Then after that analysis, you do carry out objectives that are informed by step 1. Marketing objectives informed by step 1. Then again, you have a budget for this, and then you come up with a management program that can involve what you call promotional mix. And promotional mix in advertising is when you have hybrid of strategies. So you could be using social media, you could be using television, radio, you know, this and that, you know, kind of a cocktail for you to achieve your goals. Then once you have this promotional mix, you coordinate and integrate so that, you know, everything is synchronized or falls into line. And then after that, the final step is similar to the 9-step one, where you evaluate, you control, and you follow up. I think the strategies are pretty much self-explanatory, but now if I can just very quickly speak to them in details. At the first stage, if it's the 9-step plan, you want to have very specific objectives. You know, you set what you call SMART goals. SMART goals are, you know, specific, they are measurable, the characteristics that constitute a SMART goal. And I've already come up with an example here that you can use, which is the organizational goal at this stage would be to increase our market share from 2% to 7% by the end of the first quarter of 2018. So the first quarter is January to April or thereabout, or March. So at the end of March, you want to do an evaluation and see, did you sell enough products that can account to your organizational goal, or to sell 100 pieces of our new mobile phone brand by the end of this month. So if you think about an organization that is trying to sell only 100 pieces of its handset, there is some kind of value that they want their customers to experience, because this is a target market. It's very specific. If they only want to sell 100 pieces, as opposed to an organization that wants to sell maybe millions or hundred of thousands of their handsets. Then after that, like I was saying, in the brand book, this is where now you develop common standards. And an example here would be, if you have certain colors that speak to your brand, think about red, yellow, or blue, or whatever color a corporate organization has, then there is a kind of message that these colors want to reflect. Sometimes could be about warmth, happiness, optimism, and energy. You know, things that give life some kind of bubbly kind of a feeling. Or you may want to reflect the kind of values that you have, like honesty and truth, among other values that an organization can aspire to reach to. Then at the third level, what I was calling the step 3, then here you need to come up with very clear marketing communication strategies and positioning statements. And you've probably seen different products having different statements accompanying them. Live happier every day. You know, if your brand, if you want to develop brand recognition and top of mind brand awareness among people who are in the university, aged between 18 to 25, you know, you might want to capture that kind of a statement depending on the product that you are offering. Then at step 4, you draw the budget. I think this one is pretty straightforward, even though when it comes to the nitty-gritty, we might not want to discuss that. If you have a budget of 10 million shillings, you look at what are the priority areas, what are the things that you want to focus on for you to achieve your marketing strategy. And this can be coordinated with so many other organs. You can talk to finance, you can talk to people on the ground, so that you look at the best way of achieving value and the best way of utilizing the resources that you are allocated. Then at number 5, you identify your target audience. And you know, I've already spoken so much about target audiences. you look at their motivations and what stage in the buying process they are at. So you may, if your target audience is 20-year-old campus students, you may want to come up, you may want to understand what do these people want in a phone. For instance, when they're buying a phone, what is their motivation? Are they concerned about the utility of the phone, or are they concerned about the features that that particular phone can give? They're concerned about battery life, you know, stuff like that. For younger generations, for instance, you know, life is about YOLO. You live, YOLO, you live once, so you want a product that is giving them a good image of fun, happiness, you know, those things that really matter for the moment. But for older people, the concern is about the longevity of how long can, you know, this product last, what are its utilities, and stuff like that. At step 6, then, I think this one was pretty straightforward while I was explaining it earlier, you know, just coming up with a database of the customers. And this is an interesting thing that also has got ethical concerns, depending on how you acquire people's data. If you're a company that has respect for people's privacy and ethics, then you need to acquire this data in lawful ways, and also in ways that respect the ethics of business, of doing business. You don't want your organization to be calling customers and then people are asking you in the first place, where did you get my contacts from, or who gave you my contacts, because they're already surprised. So I think that's a bad place to start doing business with someone, because you've already set a negative stage or some kind of mistrust. So you need to acquire this kind of database in legal ways, in lawful ways. You can ask people during campaigns to give you their contacts or their details, such that you can push the product. If it's online, you can ask people to tick boxes where they will agree or they give their consent to be getting promotional messages, so that someone is consciously aware they're not being spammed, that they've already ticked a box where they've agreed to get, you know, promotional messages from a certain organization of their interest. Then I've already spoken about creative strategy when I'm speaking about the YOLO, so there's no need of speaking about that again. And then launching a campaign is a very important step, and I'll speak to it in detail shortly here. So when you're launching the campaign, there is what you call the pre-launch. And the pre-launch here is you're creating a kind of a buzz even before you launch that particular product into the market. So you are heightening people's expectation about this new phone, about this new brand of a vehicle, or about, you know, something new that you want to introduce into the market even before you do the launch. And at this point, you can use mainstream media, you can use social media, you can use a mixed strategy to develop this kind of expectation amongst the target audiences. And then it comes the D-Day, you launch the product. And some of the strategies here are a mix and match. You can have a concert, for instance, where you launch the product in some hotel or in some venue that is, you know, convenient, and also that is related to the product that you are having, that speaks to the brand and message awareness. And then during the concert, you can then do live TV coverage. So sometimes you see certain products being launched, and while they're being launched, you find at the same time there's a live TV feed that is coming from the place where the product is being launched. Or sometimes, if you do not want to do an overkill, You can launch the product in let's say a concert, and then you can do a follow-up on TV and radio. So I find explainers on radio being very creative. For instance, after you launch a new phone, after the main launch, the concert or whatever it was, you have officials from the company go to certain radio stations or certain TV stations, and then during shows they can explain how these features work. You know, the point here is to amplify the message that you've already launched this new product, and then you go into mass media and you start doing explainers. That this phone has got certain features, it comes with this and that, and so on and so forth. Then after that, now you do what you call sustenance campaigns. And sustenance campaigns, at this stage you are sustaining the heat, or you're sustaining the momentum that you've already gained from the launch. You do not want that momentum to just dissipate after the day of the launch or a few days later. So sometimes you can do what you call activations, campus activations. For instance, you go to different universities and you have these ambassadors of that product wearing whatever clothes that they're wearing that speak to the product, and then you sustain that hype about the product. You can do street mobs, and if you live in Nairobi, for instance, I don't know whether you may have noticed how the NRG radio launched, and then after the launch they just had these crazy massive street mobs in the streets of Nairobi and in different places in Nairobi, and they created such a buzz at that point, and people got to know about NRG radio, and within no time it really picked up. Some other strategies to sustain here can be things like mall promotions. While people are buying, you give them certain coupons that they can redeem and get discounts if they use the product or they use the service. And I've seen this with Little Cab. They're doing a lot of these discounted coupons in a lot of mall promotions. And then also adverts, adverts in strategic media platforms like mass media. You can target either TV or radio or newspapers, depending on what is the product or your target audience is. And then different PR coverage campaigns. Oh, sorry, not PR, but press releases and coverage that all constitute PR. Then after that, now what you need to do is the final stage, which is a very, very important stage, which is called evaluation. So after you've done all those things, you want to retreat and step back and try to see, were we successful? Did we fail? How did we fare in the market? So you track, you monitor, you measure, then you learn and adjust accordingly, dependent on how you want the product to be received. So some of the things that you consider here, let me just highlight the 4 things here, is, let's say you are selling a phone and you are at the evaluation stage. So you look at the number of phones sold. And if you're looking at the number of phones sold at the evaluation stage, you want to go back to step 1, which was our first step where we were doing organizational goals. So you wanted to sell or to increase your market share from 2% to 7%. So after all this is said and done, you are trying to do an evaluation, and then you realize that you did not sell the number of phones that you expected. Then what you do is you learn from that experience, and then you adjust on the areas that you want to adjust. And if you met your targets, or if you went over and above the targets, again you also learn and you adjust depending on the context. Total number of customer comments, complaints that were resolved, because you remember there's the idea about intrinsic value. It's not just about the product itself, but how is the product being received in the market. Yes, people have bought the phones, but are they satisfied? Are their complaints resolved? Are they having, is the operating system shutting itself? Is the battery the lifespan of the battery. Like a lot of iPhone users were complaining so much about the product itself that, you know, you take a couple of pictures and you have to go back to recharge and stuff like that. How has Apple resolved that kind of customer complaints, and within what time have they resolved that? Then what is the quality of personal feedback during those sustenance campaigns, the activations and stuff like that? What are people telling you? What are their personal stories of consuming your goods or having your services? What are they telling you, and what can you learn? What can you adjust from that? And finally, in terms of positioning, the number of youths, if you are looking at 18 to 24, how many people can actually clearly recall how you positioned the product at the end of the campaign? So if you are using a slogan like Maisha Iko Sawa or Chukua Selfie, whatever campaign that you are running, when you actually do a campaign, when you actually do an evaluation, and let's say you do a survey between this target audience and you ask them, can you remember the slogan of Chukua Selfie? Then if they can remember that, that is positioning that you have actually achieved success. Whether you achieve success or failure, they are both points of learning and they are points of adjusting depending on the context. So basically that's how to use the 9-step strategy. And I had already said that you use the 9-step strategy if you're launching a new product. So it's a new product in the market. But if it's a product that's already in the market and you want to revive it, that's when you do a follow-up integrated marketing campaign strategy. And there isn't much difference, like I've already said, and probably there wouldn't be need to discuss so much in detail, except that one important component of follow-up strategies is the situational analysis. And when you are doing a situational analysis of a product, it's like you're also doing an evaluation, because this is a product that is already in the market. So you want to understand, where are we in terms of, if you look at where you were in terms of the goals of the organization or what you wanted the product to sell, where are we at this point? You carry out a kind of an analysis. What is happening around us in terms of the context, changing environment, technological changes, and probably this can apply to Nokia, you know, a company that did not respond so fast to an environment in the phone market that was changing so fast, newer technologies, newer needs and expectations from consumers, and so on and so forth. Then, who are our likely competitors? You look at the people who might run you out of business, and how you can remain competitive in that regard. Who are our likely buyers, your consumers, what do they look like? So here you have a very precise and definite mapping of your clientele. So you consult experts in this regard. So you do a lot of market research. You consult people who are conversant with issues to do with the market, the product, and target audiences and behavior. And this can be done through some research strategies such as surveys, whether they are physical surveys or online surveys. You can do focus groups if you want to get very kind of in-depth kind of feedback, or you can even do desktop research that probably you don't need to leave the office for that. So I think that's a very important strategy and step that is significantly different for a product that is already in the market and a product that is being introduced into the market. The rest of the strategies somewhat are related. Here you want to have a creative strategy, which I've already spoken about, a promotional strategy, a sales strategy, digital strategy. You come up with direct responses and PR strategies. Most of them I've already spoken about in the 9-step planning and strategy. So this is how it looks like if if I can wrap everything I've said into this illustration, then I've adopted this from a source that is different from the initial one, and the idea here was to discuss the strategic position of advertising in relation to the overall business objective. And then you can see I've already explained while we started that it is not just hierarchical, meaning that different layers feed into each other, but it's also very integrated in the sense that they are very interlocking, they are very intertwined, and they depend on one another. And this strategy is running all the way from analysis of the situation to developing objectives to developing the budget. And then after you develop the budget, you come up with a series of other promotional mix of things, including personal selling budget, sales promotion budget, among others. Then you implement that. Then you go to the field, you coordinate and integrate, and then after that you evaluate and you control. So by controlling means, what did you learn, and from what you learned, how do you adjust according to the knowledge that you've gotten from the field. So the final illustration today would be a creative strategist template that is on your screen. And if you are to give a background about the product, then this is what I was saying earlier. You are trying to understand. So where are we? What is our situation? Why are we doing this? Blah, blah, blah. You're trying to foreground the entire strategy. Then you develop objectives that are already smart, simple, specific, measurable, realistic, time-bound. I can't remember on top of my head what S stands for, but you set objectives that are smart, achievable. Then you look at your target audiences, who are the people that you want to position the product or the service to. You zero in on their profiles. You zero in on their gender, you zero in on their age, income bracket, education, all that plethora of things that constitutes people's profile. Then what are you promising? What are you offering? What is the product offering? What will people benefit from this phone? What will people benefit from this car? Or what will people benefit from this service? Then you explain the competitive edge of that product. Then you give proof. You can provide as much evidence as it is possible depending on the context. You can use previous clients or whatever it is that you get to. You can do explainers and stuff like that. Then you develop what you call to action messages. And these are the key messages that will either be driving to the product or to the service or the intermediaries, if it's pull strategies. And then you look at the requirements and the timelines. So these are logistics. You're looking at what will be required, in what format and size, and when is it required. And here you can think about a radio advert in Swahili, a digital banner, a newspaper advertorial, among many others, more creative strategies. So students, we have come to the end of our lesson today on advertising, media strategies and TAC. And in our lesson today, we were really looking at the strategic position of advertising strategies and how that relates to the overall corporate or business strategies. I do wish you well in the rest of the semester, and we shall meet again. Thank you for watching.